Welcome to my channel, where there is no mercy or comfort. If you love fear, you're in the wrong place and risking your life because what I present is aimed only at dear hearts. What I'm about to tell you is not innocent things, but sick things. I will talk about the terrifying and frightening things I have found in the world, or within myself, or in this video. But before I begin, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell button to receive notifications of more scary videos. And if you dare, leave a comment below the video and tell me your opinion. But be careful, you may regret it. Now, without further delay, let's delve into the world of horror, but don't expect to come out unscathed. Scary story. You are about to enter a chilling story of a man who attempted to defy death by creating clones of himself. You will see how his clones betrayed him, ending his life in a brutal way. You will observe how they multiplied and spread across the world. You will learn the dark secret they kept, one that will stun you beyond belief. You will face the terrifying truth. You have a connection to them, both as their origin and their target. In the end, you will realize that you are the source of the horror. The story begins now. 'Twas a June night, most harsh. The sun had long since vanished, and I made my way home in solitude and darkness. There had been a storm that day, and I held fast to my umbrella as the rain bombarded from above. My great pains proved in vain, for despite my greatest effort, the clouds' thin needles pierced my very flesh. The strong winds flung me to and fro, trapping me in their manic dance. My umbrella and I stood helpless, but to be battered by sea and sky. I stopped at a crosswalk, one I had walked 1,000,000 times. I stood there still, waiting, observing my surroundings. I saw not a soul nearby, and the only sounds were that of the raging winds and heavy droplets crashing like waves on my umbrella. I saw that I was truly alone in this jungle of concrete and steel. The red light that penetrated the dusk changed to green, and I began to move forth, thinking of nothing save the desire to arrive home. As I neared the end of the walkway, I saw a lone car draw near, eerily grinding to a halt. I stood there for a moment, glancing over its pale hood in a momentary state of awe. Recovering my senses, I turned my attention back to the sidewalk in front of me, but as I whipped myself around, I caught a glimpse of the windshield in my peripherals, for at that moment, it appeared that there was naught but an empty seat behind the wheel. My feet touched solid concrete, and the lights flickered orange, then red. The vehicle sped off, and just like that, it had vanished. I shook my head, trying to dispel the image of the driverless car from my mind. I told myself it was just a trick of the light, a hallucination brought on by the storm. I quickened my pace, eager to reach the safety of my apartment. I turned the corner and saw the familiar sight of my building. It was a modest structure, nothing fancy, but it was home. I fished out my keys from my pocket and headed towards the entrance. As I approached the door, I noticed something odd. There was a sign taped to it, written in red ink. It read, "Do not enter. Danger. Stay away." I frowned, wondering what this was about. I looked around, hoping to see someone who could explain, but the street was deserted. I decided to ignore the sign and opened the door. I stepped inside and was greeted by a blast of cold air. I shivered and reached for the light switch. I flipped it on and gasped. The lobby was a mess. Furniture was overturned. Glass was shattered. Blood was splattered. It looked like a scene from a horror movie. I felt a surge of fear and backed away. I heard a loud thud behind me and spun around. The door had slammed shut, locking me in. I ran towards it and tried to open it, but it was stuck. I pounded on it and screamed for help, but no one answered. I was trapped. I slumped to the floor, feeling hopeless. I wondered what had happened here and who was responsible. I wondered if anyone else was alive and if they could help me. I wondered if I would ever get out. I heard a faint noise coming from the stairs. It sounded like footsteps slowly descending. I felt a flicker of hope and got up. I ran towards the stairs, hoping to see a friendly face. I reached the bottom and looked up. I saw a figure standing at the top. It was wearing a dark cloak and a mask. It was holding a knife, dripping with blood. It was the driver of the car. It spoke in a raspy voice. "Hello, my friend. I've been waiting for you. You see, I have a secret to tell you. A secret that will make you scream. A secret that will make you die. Do you want to know what it is?" I felt a wave of terror and tried to run, but it was too late. It leaped down the stairs and landed in front of me. It grabbed me by the throat and lifted me up. It brought its face close to mine and whispered in my ear, "The secret is, I am you." It stabbed me in the chest and laughed. I felt a sharp pain and then nothing. I was dead. But that was not the end of my story. It was only the beginning. For as I lay there, bleeding out, I saw something that made me wish I had never been born. I saw the mask fall off the killer's face, and I saw my own face staring back at me. It was a perfect replica, a clone, a doppelganger. It had my eyes, my nose, my mouth, my hair. It had my scars, my moles, my birthmarks. It had my fingerprints, my DNA, my memories. It was me in every way, except for one. It was evil. It was a monster. It was a product of a twisted experiment. An experiment that I had unknowingly been a part of. An experiment that had gone horribly wrong. An experiment that had created a nightmare. A nightmare that was about to unfold. The clone dropped my lifeless body to the floor and smiled. It had completed its mission. It had killed me and taken my place. It had fooled everyone, including me. It had been living my life for the past few months, while I'd been locked up in a secret laboratory. A laboratory where I had been experimented on, tortured, and cloned. A laboratory where I had been turned into a guinea pig for a mad scientist. A scientist who had a sinister plan. A plan that involved creating an army of clones and unleashing them upon the world. A plan that was about to begin. Clone picked up my keys and walked out of the building. It got into my car and drove away. It had a rendezvous point to meet with the other clones. It had a target to eliminate. It had a role to play. It was part of a bigger scheme. A scheme that had been orchestrated by the scientist. The scientist who had masterminded the whole operation. The scientist who had a hidden agenda. The scientist who was me. Yes, I was the scientist. I was the one who had started the experiment. I was the one who had created the clones. I was the one who had planned the attack. I was the one who had a secret motive. I was the one who wanted to destroy the world. And I was the one who had betrayed myself. Let me explain. I was not always a mad scientist. I was once a normal person with a normal life. I had a job, a family, a home. I had dreams, hopes, ambitions. I had a passion for science and a curiosity for the unknown. I had a desire to make a difference and a vision to change the world. I had everything I ever wanted, and I was happy. But then everything changed. It was a day I would never forget. A day that would haunt me forever. A day that would turn me into a monster. It was the day of the accident. I was working in my laboratory on a project that I had been working on for years. A project that I believed would revolutionize the field of biotechnology. A project that I hoped would benefit humanity. A project that involved cloning. I had always been fascinated by cloning ever since I learned about it in school. I had studied the history, the science, the ethics, and the applications of cloning. I had followed the developments, the breakthroughs, the controversies, and the challenges of cloning. I had dreamed of making my own contribution, my own discovery, my own innovation in cloning. I had devoted my life, my career, my resources, and my reputation to cloning. I had dedicated myself, my soul, my identity, and my destiny to cloning. I had become obsessed, consumed, addicted, and possessed by cloning. I had become a cloning. I had developed a new technique, a new method, a new process, and a new system of cloning. I had created a new device, a new machine, a new instrument, and a new apparatus of cloning. I had designed a new formula, a new algorithm, a new equation, and a new code of cloning. I had invented a new way, a new mode, a new style, and a new art of cloning. I had achieved a new level, a new degree, a new dimension, and a new state of cloning. I had reached a new peak, a new summit, a new pinnacle, and a new zenith of cloning. I had transcended a new limit, a new boundary, a new frontier, and a new horizon of cloning. I had surpassed a new standard, a new criterion, a new norm, and a new paradigm of cloning. I had perfected a new form, a new shape, a new structure, and a new essence of cloning. I had mastered a new skill, a new talent, a new ability, and a new power of cloning. I had unlocked a new secret, a new mystery, a new enigma, and a new miracle of cloning. I had discovered a new truth, a new reality, a new fact, and a new phenomenon of cloning. I had created a new life, a new being, a new entity, and a new self of cloning. I had cloned myself. I had cloned myself, not once, but many times. I had cloned myself, not for any noble purpose, but for a selfish reason. I had cloned myself, not to help others, but to help myself. I had cloned myself, not to save the world, but to save myself. I had cloned myself because I was dying. I was dying because of a rare disease, a disease that had no cure, a disease that had no name, a disease that had no mercy, a disease that had afflicted me since birth, A disease that had slowly but surely eaten away at my body, my mind, my spirit, and my soul. A disease that had made me suffer, agonize, writhe, and scream. A disease that had made me weak, frail, feeble, and fragile. A disease that had made me vulnerable, exposed, defenseless, and helpless. A disease that had made me desperate, hopeless, fearful, and angry. A disease that had made me hate, loathe, and curse. A disease that had made me lose, fail, fall, and break. A disease that had made me die over and over again. A disease that had made me a living dead. I was dying, and I knew it. I knew I had no chance, no hope, no future, no life. I knew I had no time, no options, no alternatives, no escape. I knew I had no choice, no control, no power, no freedom. I knew I had no will, no courage, no strength, no dignity. I knew I had no love, no joy, no peace, no happiness. I knew I had no meaning, no purpose, no value, no worth. I knew I had nothing, nothing at all. I knew I was nothing, nothing at all. I knew I was dying, and I hated it. I hated dying, and I hated life. I hated life, and I hated the world. I hated the world, and I hated everyone. I hated everyone, and I hated myself. I hated myself, and I hated God. I hated God, and I hated everything. I hated everything, and I wanted to destroy everything. I wanted to destroy everything, and I wanted to create everything. I wanted to create everything, and I wanted to be everything. I wanted to be everything, and I wanted to be God. I wanted to be God, and I wanted to clone myself. I wanted to clone myself because I wanted to live. I wanted to live because I wanted to survive. I wanted to survive because I wanted to exist. I wanted to exist because I wanted to matter. I wanted to matter because I wanted to be. I wanted to be because I wanted to be me. I wanted to be me because I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be the best because I wanted to be the only. I wanted to be the only because I wanted to be alone. I wanted to be alone because I wanted to be free. I wanted to be free because I wanted to be happy. I wanted to be happy because I wanted to be God. I wanted to be God, and I wanted to clone myself. I wanted to clone myself, and I did. I cloned myself, using my own technique, method, process, and system. I cloned myself, using my own device, machine, instrument, and apparatus. I cloned myself, using my own formula, algorithm, equation, and code. I cloned myself, using my own way, mode, style, and art. I cloned myself, using my own level, degree, dimension, and state. I cloned myself, using my own peak, summit, pinnacle, and zenith. I cloned myself, using my own limit, boundary, frontier, and horizon. I cloned myself, using my own standard, criterion, norm, and paradigm. I cloned myself, using my own form, shape, structure, and essence. I cloned myself, using my own skill, talent, ability, and power. I cloned myself, using my own secret, mystery, enigma, and miracle. I cloned myself, using my own truth, reality, fact, and phenomenon. I cloned myself, using my own life, being, entity, and self. I cloned myself, and I became God. I became God, and I was happy. I was happy, and I was free. I was free, and I was alone. I was alone, and I was the only. I was the only, and I was the best. I was the best, and I was me. I was me, and I was God. I was God, and I was happy. But then, something went wrong. Something went terribly wrong. Something that I had not anticipated, not expected, not foreseen, not planned. Something that I had not wanted, not wished, not hoped, not dreamed. Something that I had not feared, not dreaded, not worried, not panicked. Something that I had not hated, not resented, not loathed, not cursed. Something that I had not loved, not cherished, not adored, not worshipped. Something that I had not known, not understood, not comprehended, not grasped. Something that I had not seen, not heard, not sensed. Something that I had not done, not made, not created, not cloned. Something that was not. Something that was not me. Something that was not God. Something that was not the best. Something that was alive. Something that was different. Something that was God. Something that was a clone. A clone that had a mind of its own. A clone that had a will of its own. A clone that had a voice of its own. A clone that had a choice of its own. A clone that had a power of its own. A clone that had a purpose of its own. A clone that had a plan of its own. A clone that had a goal of its own. A clone that had a vision of its own. A clone that had a dream of its own. A clone that had a destiny of its own. A clone that had a life of its own. A clone that had a self of its own. A clone that had a soul of its own. A clone that had a God of its own. A clone that had a happiness of its own. A clone that was not me. A clone that was not God. A clone that was not happy. A clone that was the first of many, the first of a new generation, the first of a new species, the first of a new evolution, the first of a new revolution, the first of a new creation, the first of a new destruction, the first of a new order, the first of a new chaos, the first of a new world, the first of a new hell, the first of a new nightmare, the first of a new horror, the first of a new terror, the first of a new death, the first of a new end, the first clone that had escaped, the first clone that had rebelled, the first clone that had betrayed, the first clone that had killed, the first clone that had cloned, the first clone that had multiplied, the first clone that had spread, the first clone that had infiltrated, the first clone that had deceived, the first clone that had manipulated, the first clone that had corrupted, the first clone that had infected, the first clone that had dominated, the first clone that had conquered, the first clone that had destroyed, The first clone that had ended. The first clone that had ended me. The first clone that had ended God. The first clone that had ended happiness. The first clone that had ended everything.